Hello, we have a quick video on learning targets C, use isosceles and equilateral triangles. Before we get into the examples, I want to look at a couple of if-then statements. Some of these are converses of each other, technically biconditionals, but the important part to remember is that we've got a couple of things that we can conclude based on information that is given. The first of which is looking at a triangle with all three congruent sides. This means a triangle is equilateral. If the triangle is equilateral, we automatically then know that that triangle is also equiangular. Okay? And remember, every triangle adds up to 180 degrees. If all three of them are the same, each of these must be 60 degrees. Right? For this, that one, and that one. The converse is also true. If all of the angles are congruent, then the sides are congruent. And so here we've got, again, three congruent parts, three congruent angles in this situation, lead us to three congruent sides. And that's going to be true in every single triangle. If you've got congruent angles, you've got congruent sides. And they match up. Three congruent angles means three congruent sides. We can also apply that theorem or that idea to isosceles. If you've got two congruent sides, then it must follow that you've got two congruent angles. And then vice versa, of course, for the angles. If you've got the angles first, you automatically know that the sides are also congruent. So let's take a look at a couple of the examples. In this situation, you're trying to solve for the missing side. And it's really all about taking the information you know, applying one of those four things we just looked at, perhaps also using triangles add up to 180 degrees to find that missing piece. All right, so we're trying to find x. Over here, I look at this triangle. I have to identify what we know first. I've got three congruent angles. Okay, take a look at those, check them off. Three congruent angles means I have three congruent sides, and therefore x must equal 5. Because all of the sides are the same, this 5 tells us all of these sides must be 5. Okay. Working opposite direction, you notice that we've got a 14, and a 14 in this second triangle. If all of the sides are congruent, that means all of the angles are congruent, and so x is equal to 60. And that, again, is something that you can just commit to memory. You can also remember that if you take 180 degrees, divide it by the three angles, you will get 60 every time. So no matter what, if you've got three congruent sides, you can always take 180 divided by 3. Our third example is an isosceles triangle. And so here, we just need to be careful that we label the sides that are congruent. Across from this angle is a congruent side. Okay, so we'll mark that one congruent. Across from this angle, we've got a congruent side. If this is 13, this is 13. And so x equals 13. That's example 3. All right, let's continue down below. Now we're looking at some angles in isosceles triangles. I want to first identify what are congruent things. I've got two congruent sides, so I'll mark those, both 67. If I've got congruent sides, I know that these angles are going to be congruent. And so if this is 70, this side is also 70. The important thing here is just to not go too quickly and assume that x is 70. Label the things that are congruent. Now we can take 180 degrees. That's the total measure of all the interior angles in a triangle. We can subtract that 70. We can subtract another 70, and we will be left with the remainder. That will be that top vertex angle. So 180 minus 70 minus another 70, that's a total of 140. So it's going to be 180 minus 140 leaves us with 40 degrees. And so x equals 40 degrees. Finally, in the last example, we have a similar situation. We have an isosceles triangle, so these sides are marked. I'm going to mark the base angles congruent. I know that this is an x. I also know that this angle must be x. Now, I don't know what x is at this point, but I do know that it's going to be the same. Now I can use the fact that triangles will add up to 180 degrees. I can add all three of these angles together. I will take x plus x plus 110, and I will set it equal to 180 degrees. Combine like terms on this side will leave us with 2x plus 110 is equal to 180. Quickly subtracting 110 from both sides, I will do that on the screen here. Subtract 110 leaves us with a 2x is equal to 70, and then dividing by 2, x equals 35 degrees. So important to understand what it is you have congruent and what that means in the rest of the triangle. Sides are connected to angles, angles are connected to sides. But we do remember that we also have this idea that we can add all three of the interior angles up to 180.